Today morning we have discussed about the stages of delegations. The stage of delegations can be considered in two forms. First, during the expenditure, when government organizations, public organizations encounter with expenditure. So, what are the procedures? Authorization, approval, certification, payment. So the authorization should be taken before the incident, before purchase any supply or service, or before start the construction process or so, right? After getting the service, after the work done, then go for approval for the payment. After the payment, after the approval of the payment, then it's come to the certification officer. Then it will be goes to payment officer for payment of cash in form of money, or in form of cash, or check, or whatever the mode. Right? In case of income, first it should be assessed properly. So how much to be collected, from which person to be collected, that sort of things, and who are the collection officer, and what are the duties, and then finally acceptance officer of the collected payment. Now we will have a deep look on expenditure, government expenditure. The government expenditure, what are the steps to be followed, is explained by financial regulation number 136, 37, 38, and 39. First, we'll see about authorization. Authorization. An officer who is empowered to commission supplies, right? An officer who has the power, right? Who has the authority to commission supplies, work, or services is referred to as authorizing officer. Most of the time, it is done by the higher officials. The authorizing officer is differ based on the limit, based on the amount of expenditure. Right? Any officer empowered to commission supplies, works, or services will do so in writing. It should be, the authorization should be in writing, and will be responsible to the accounting officer in the following aspect. Right? So the authorization should be in writing, and also the authorizing officer should responsible to accounting officer. Accounting officer means head of the department. Right? He is responsible to the accounting officer in the following respects. Number one, he is responsible that the work, right? The work means like construction of building or rehabilitation, so whatsoever, right? Painting of the building or any other the forms of work, supply of goods, say supply of photocopy machine, supply of stationeries, other items, or services. Services may be in the form of consultant service, or cleaning service, security service, IT service, or whatever the form. So that the work, supply, or service is covered by appropriate authority. Right? Before giving authorization, he should check whether he have enough authority to authorize that expenditure, and falls within the scope of the what, or other authorized financial provisions, or is properly chargeable to the account involved. Before approving, he should check whether the amount is under his scope. Right? The level of the authorization for expenditure is limited by the amount of the expenditure. I will explain by taking an example, right? Right, and also he should confirm that he has or he or she authorized under the financial provisions, and also he should check the properly chargeable to the accounts involved. So there are accounts under the each heads, each projects, each programs, right? So he should confirm that also, and also uh, he, in respect that the he exercise a due judgment, right? So he's an authorizing officer. He should apply his knowledge, best of his knowledge, and make judgment, a due judgment, that he does not exceed the specified limit of his authority, right? He should very careful about that. Say, for example, his authority limit is 1 million, but the expenditure will incur for 12 million, 1.2 million, right? At this moment, he can't authorize the expenditure because his limit is 1 million. No? The expenditure is 1.2 million. So the expenditure is exceed the limit. At that time, he unable to authorize the expenditure, and that every steps in the procedure set down in the financial regulation has been duly taken into consider. Right, when he authorize any expenditure, he should very careful about whether is it in line with financial regulation or not. Right, so he should use his own judgment, due judgment, and he should confirm all the things, all the actions are in line with regulations, financial regulations. And also in respect that uh, the commitments which are expected to mature for payment, commitments which are expected to mature for payment in particular financial year do not exceed the fund available in his respective allocation. So for example, for a particular expenditure, allocated amount is 500,000 for this year. But if the expenditure exceeds this 500,000, he should not authorize the expenditure. Right? It, the amount should not exceed the budget for the particular period year. And that the sum due on commitments, the sum amount of money payable, right? At the end of the work done, it's some the amount is become due. No, that sum due on commitments as they arise against each of his allocation to other departments, allocations, and the amount recorded are subject to the continuous review in light of further information that become available as work progress. Right? And that the information mentioned in 4 here is passed periodically to certifying officer for in case of any right uh, expenditure, he should monitor, review, continuous review. He should make a continuous review, right? And about is passes periodically to the certifying officer. Certifying officer most of the time in the DSF accountant or other experts, panel of experts in the organization, right? The officers will certify about the work completed by the tender or bidder or the supplier, and that his records are compared and reconciled at least once a month with those of certifying officer, so that he may know the precise amount available for the for further commitments. Right, during the year, a certain amount has been allocated for expenditure, right? And there are many expenditure will incur. They should confirm that before authorizing any expenditure, they should confirm with the fund manager do they have enough money to make this expenditure? So therefore, at least every month, the accounting of the fund manager and the authorizing officer should communicate each other. Then only they can understand how much amount of money they are having in their pocket or in their budget. And in any case involving reasonable doubt, in any case involving reasonable doubt as to the availability of fund or as to the economy or the financial propriety of the transactions, generally he seeks the advice of the accountant or officer in charge of accounting operations. So when he has a serious doubt about the availability of fund uh, balance, right, amount of money available on his hand, or in case of economy, efficiency of the operation, efficiency of the expenditure, right, he should seek advice. He he or she can discuss with the accountant or the officer in charge of accounting operations. So this 136 FR is about authorization. Once the authorization is done, the process of getting work, supply or service will be started. The authorizing officer is initiator of that expenditure. After the authorization, only all the expenditures will be start. Once the expenditure has done, then the supplier or the payee will submit the voucher, or on behalf of them, officers will fill the vouchers, fill the vouchers for payment. At that time, approval should be there. Approving officer should approve that expenditure. After authorization, an expenditure will be done. After that, approving officer should approve that expenditure. An officer who is empowered to approve services, works, or supplies on completion to emit claims, right? First, an officer who is empowered to approve the service, who has the authority to approve the service or works or supplies on completion, right? Very important. On completion, after the completion only, they can approve the expenditure, right? On completion. And emit claims, right? They should help the claiming officer, claiming person, claiming payee is referred in this regulation as approving officer. He will be responsible to accounting officer for verifying, right? And also again, he will be responsible to the accounting officer, head of the department, for verifying. Number one, so the approving officer should verify the following: verify that the work, service, or supply arises out of an authorization, right? Before approve, they should confirm it is already authorized. The expenditure is already authorized as per the financial regulation 136 by the appropriate authorizing officer and or out of an agreement, right? Number two, verify that the work or service has been performed. The work or service has been performed, or the supply rendered in terms of such authorization, right? The work has been performed based on their authorization and or the relevant agreement, and any authorized variations therefrom in any respect. If there are any deviation from the authorization or the agreement, especially with regard to the compliance with terms relating to qualify of materials used, the quantities and the period or the period of time within which the portion of the contract have to be completed. So the approving officer should verify all the works has been done according to the authorization and agreement, and they have to give special attention on the quality of the item, quality of material used, the quantities of the items, on what period they have taken, and all the things they should be certified. In all aspect, the expenditure, the agreement has met. The act of the supplier or service provider met according to the approval and agreement. And they should verify that rates, right? The rates and the total sums, rates per unit or per hour, like that, or per work per unit, like that. The rates and the total amount, total sums approved for payment are in accordance with authorized scales. Right? Again, it should check whether rates and total sums are approved for the payment in accordance with authorized scales. Authorized scales mean they already mentioned the rate. So for example, for labor per hour 500. When they fill the voucher, it should be 500. Or if it is deviate from that value, say 600, 700 per hour, then the approving officer not to verify, not to approve that expenditure. Authorized scales, or in terms of agreement or any authorized variations, and where they are when and, and where there is no authorized or standard rates or agreement that the rate are fair and reasonable. If there is no such scales in the agreement or in the authorizing document, he should check whether the amount, the rate and the amounts are fair and reasonable. Fair and reasonable. And should verify that in a contract of employment, the appropriate conditions, rules and regulations have been complied with. Again, they have to confirm that the conditions, rules and regulations are followed it, and verify that in case of supplies of items, say supply of stationery, supplies of uh, uh, what any items, photocopy machine, printer, like that, they have been examined and correctly taken on charge, right? They have, when deliver the item, right, by the supplier, the approving officer should examine whether they are getting correct amount at correct condition, examine and correctly taken on charge, otherwise accounted for in terms of regulation or in instruction of the government. So if the at the time of delivery, the approving officer thinks that this item, the delivering item, is not line with the agreement, then they can act, they can take decision according to the agreement or instruction of the government. 6, verifying that in case of bill of payment of electricity, light bill, right, the gas, water, telephone and other similar services supplied, they are checked with registers kept to show the monthly meter reading and other relevant particulars, right? They have to have a proper record on the monthly usage and monthly expenditure. If the amount billed in a particular month deviate widely from the average normal monthly consumption pattern, such case should be investigated and remedial actions where necessary should be taken, right? So for example, a monthly bill for that office every month normally it's deviate from 9,000 to 10,000 on average. But this month they are getting 25,000, 30,000, 32,000, like that. So abnormal increase. So that time they have to, the approving officer should have to give special attention on that. And then we'll see FR 138 is about certification of vouchers. Certification of voucher. So first authorization, second approving, third certification of vouchers. After getting approval of the voucher, the certification of certifying officer will check the thing, right? An officer who is empowered to certify vouchers. Empowered to certify vouchers is referred to in these regulations as certifying officer. He is responsible to the accounting officer to see, number one, that the amount payable on each voucher. Amount payable on each voucher is a correct charge on the head, program, project, object class, etc. There are a group of expenditure, right? The expenditure has been categorized under the different heading, program, project, like that. And at the time of checking, certifying the vouchers, the certifying officer should check whether a particular expenditure is divided correctly, recorded correctly, charged on the particular class or the relevant accounts, and is covered by a warrant signed by Ministry of Finance or is covered by other appropriate authority. And number two, he should see that the payment will not cause an excess on the amount provided for the current financial year, and that it has been posted in the appropriation ledger or other appropriate ledger under the relevant head, program, project, object class, etc. on the relevant account. The certifying officer should certify that the amount of expenditure is not exceeds from the particular budget, approved budget or approved estimates. That estimates and accounts are classified according to the relevant head, program, project or class or so on, or the relevant accounts. They have to pass in a, to the relevant account. And also the certifying officer see that the payee means the person or an entity who is receiving the money. The payee shown on the face of voucher, right? The person shown in the voucher are the persons entitled to the payment, and that amount provided for the payment to each of them is correct. So the person who is putting the name in the voucher and the person who is getting the money are same, and also they should confirm the name in the voucher is a correct person to be paid, and also the amount. And see that he attest, certify on the face of voucher, right? He should attest on the face of the voucher that he has satisfied himself either from personal knowledge, right? Most of the time the certifying officer is an accountant. He should use his personal knowledge and professional knowledge, or if he if the certifying officer unable, so does do not have enough knowledge on that technical matter, they can get the technical assistance from officers, other officers. So from certificates, statements or orders of officers empowered to give them, right? That the provisions of 136, 37 have been complied with, right? So for example, they are constructing a building, right? The accountant does not have enough knowledge about the technical matters in the building of the building. That time the certifying officer can get some letter or certificate or statement from the technical officer building, a civil technical officers regarding that building. Based on that document, they can certify the voucher. And also see that the certificates mentioned earlier here, mentioned in 4, referred in 4 above, are attached to the voucher, or that the letter bearers are not quoting reference to the files in which they appear, right? If his work is certified by the technical officer or some other officers, that statement should be attached with the voucher, right? And also see that all relevant deductions and those notified to him or authorized or required to be recovered have been met, or particularly in respect of repayment of advances, contributions, surcharges, penalties, forfeitures, or other liabilities. For example, 1,000 is payable. 1,000 is payable for electricity for this month. Earlier, we have done an additional amount of 100 rupees. So this time we have to pay only 900. That time, the certifying officer should certify that or the previous amount 100 already deducted. Right? This kind of things should be certified by the certifying officer. And also, the he should see that the voucher is accurate. The voucher is accurate and complete in every detail, and that the exercise judgment, and he use his personal knowledge, professional knowledge, exercise judgment, discretion, and initiatives in light of general conditions prevailing in the department which he serves. Right? Right. We see the one example. Each authorizing officer is responsible for keeping within his own allocation. But if the certifying officer sees that there is a danger of commitments exceeding an allocation budget, there's a danger that the budgeted expenditure is there, but actual expenditure going to exceed. He should draw the authorizing officer's attention to that matter. Right? Authorizing officer, all the times, if he's a higher official, he may he may do not know the available balance, but fund manager, the certifying officer, know about the available balance. That if the certifying officer knows that yeah the expenditure going to exceed the budgeted amount, that time he should communicate, he should inform to the authorizing officer about the issue. Moreover, there may be occasions when certifying officer has serious doubt about accepting vouchers which appear correct in every formal respect. You know, the in document wise everything are okay, but the fraud and people make something, right, to abuse the government money. So in that case also he should communicate with authorizing officer. Again, a general standard of financial management or particular transaction may have discreting features even before the stage of voucher preparation is reached. In any such case, certifying officer concerned is the right and the duty to represent the matter to his superior officer and, if necessary, to the accounting officer personally with a request for specific written deductions. Right? If there are any things doubtful to him, he should inform. He should communicate with the superior officer in in the form of writing. Now we'll see the last stage of expenditure, that is payment of voucher. Right? Payment of voucher is making payment. The officer who pays the money actually. An officer who is empowered to make payments on certified vouchers is referred to in this regulation as paying officer. He will be responsible to the accounting officer, head of the department, to see that the payment of voucher, the paying officer should see that every vouchers accepted for payment has been has been certified by an officer who has authority to do so. Right? Before make payment, it should be certified by authorized person. It means certifying officer. And see that the voucher shows no evidence of having been tampered or altered with since it left the certifying officer's hand. And also he should confirm that there is no any changes has been made after leaving the voucher from the certifying officer. No tipex used. That's why the if anybody use tipex on voucher, the voucher will be not accepted most of the time. And see that any effect within his special knowledge are duly taken into account before made payment. Right, at the time of payment, before make payment, the paying officer should use his special knowledge on payment, and he should see that a proper receipt is obtained. Proper receipt is obtained for every payment made. Every payment made. So every payment he should issue a receipt, right? He should get the receipt from the pay every payment made as an evidence for that payment, and that the identity of the payee is established, and at the time of payment, the paying officer should confirm that we are paying the money to a correct person, to correct person. Uh, Therefore, the paying officer requesting the identity card or any other form of identity. And see that in the case of payment by check, money order, etc., the name and other particulars appearing on the check or other money order applications agree with those shown on the face of the voucher. The name and particulars should be same as in the voucher. And see that the net amount shown on the face of voucher is duly paid. Duly paid, and the effect of payment noted on voucher by means of paid stamp on and in initiate, right? So when once the payment is made, he should place the paid stamp on that voucher, because if they do so, they can avoid the double payment on that voucher. And every payment is promptly noted in the prescribed records and duly brought into account. The paying officer should record about the payment, proper account. And also see that where cash is entrusted to his care, he takes due precautions. Cash is entrusted to his care, right? The paying officer keep the money with him. He takes due precautions against theft or loss, thief or loss, and that the balance in hand agrees with the balance appearing in the cash book at the close of each business days, right? Money in hand and the balance in the book should be equal. And finally, he should see that in case of check payment, the bank balance is adequate, right? Bank balance is adequate. Before writing check, they have to confirm, are there enough money in the bank account adequate to meet all payments. The number of checks is noted on the voucher. The number of there's a number on each and every check. There's a number, so he should record that number also. in the voucher. The balance is reconciled periodically with the bank statement. You know what is a bank reconciliation statement? So that part also should be done. That government revenue. Before that, I will give you one example how the payment expenditure, regarding the expenditure, how they delegate. Right, wait for a while. I will show you the one document. Right. See how the financing authority has delegated in a university system, right? So university is an institution, right? The officers at the university shall be the following: vice chancellor, deputy vice chancellor, rector, dean of the faculty, registrar, librarian, bursar, and other posts. Here, who is the chief accounting officer for a university? Who is chief accounting officer? As I told you, the secretary to the ministry is the chief accounting officer. The secretary to the Ministry of Higher Education, now higher education, no, not higher education. Now the name of the ministry is Ministry of Education, is the chief accounting officer of the university. An accounting officer, we know that head of the department is the accounting officer. Therefore, the vice chancellor is the accounting officer, because vice chancellor is the head of the department, head of the institution. So the vice chancellor is the accounting officer of the university. An assistant accounting officer, the registrar is assistant accounting officer of the university. The vice chancellor has delegated his authority to the registrar. And custodian of records and properties of the university, again registrar. Vice chancellor has delegated his authority to the registrar regarding that custodian of records and properties of the university. Custodian of fund, that is bursar, right? In our term, we say accountant. Custodian of the fund is the accountant. In the university system, it's a bursar. The bursar is the custodian of fund of the university, right? And authorization, right? Authorization. See the limit. Delegation of financial authority, authorizing officers, and their limits. If any expenditure uh, it reaches 100 million, the council should be a authorizing officer. If the expenditure is like 4 million and 3.5 million, it's mean below 5 million, the vice chancellor can be a authorized person for any expenditure. And say for the dean, his limit is 500,000. Up to 500,000, dean can serve as a authorizing officer. Okay, the head of the department, his limit is 15,000. So he can be a authorized person up to 15,000 of the expenditure, right? So this is how the authorizing officer has been classified based on the limit. And right, this is about authorizing. And see the approving limits, approving officers. So if any amount is already authorized by an officer or group of people or board, up to 100 million, council can be served as an authorizing officer, not approving officer. Vice chancellor can approve up to 25 million. Vice chancellor can approve after getting authorization, and work will start. After complete everything, it will come for the payment. That time, vice chancellor can be approve that expenditure up to 25 million, and dean can approve the expenditure up to 500,000. Head of the department also can be approve up to 15,000. So this is how uh, financial expenditure of the government organization has been delegated. And the certifying officer uh, is uh, is done by all vouchers certificate. The bursar, no, bursar, certifying officer, bursar or deputy bursar, senior assistant bursar, assistant bursar, right? So it is based on the amount empowered to certify the voucher of payment. And payment of vouchers, right? So any person who has authorized to make payment, sheriff or any representative of the bursar. In case of DS office, uh, certifying officer and the paying officer both are under the hand of accountant. Accountant may delegate his power one of his assistants officers.